Mornings with Will on 531 VI.
You're listening to Pacific Mornings. It is 10 past 8. Great to have your company this Friday. Now, University of Otago researchers have helped uncover the first ancient genomes from Papua New Guinea in the Bismarck archipelago, offering groundbreaking insights into early Pacific migration. Now, the study published in Nature, Ecology and Evolution reveals that early coastal Pacific communities were genetically diverse and did not intermarry for extended periods. Now, key findings, I'll rattle off a few before we get into the interview. Ancient Pacific cultures were more diverse and complex than previously thought. Papuan genetic signatures were found on Watum Island, long associated with Lapita pottery, suggesting coexisting but separate populations, which is rather fascinating. And as well, early Pacific settlers likely arrived unmixed, with Papuan descendants joining later. Here to discuss more on this is Dr. Monica Tromp. A very good morning to you.
Morning. Good to be with you today.
Likewise, thank you very much for your time. Hey, look, I kind of naturally, it begs the question first. I mean, what do these findings mean for Pacific people today in terms of being able to understand their ancestral roots?
So these people are the ancestors of people throughout the Pacific, so including Maori and other Pacific cultures throughout the South Pacific anyway. And it shows just how amazing your ancestors were, because there's these different groups of people with very distinct cultures and very distinct languages, even today, very distinct languages, and they were together at the same period of time, several thousand years ago, but lots of them were so distinct from each other that they decided they didn't really want to hang out with each other either. So
Wow. Okay, with that in mind, and this is the part where I was like, wow, that's fascinating. In terms of how significant is the discovery of Papuan genetic signatures on Watham Island for Pacific migration narratives, I suppose?
yeah, so it's very interesting because there's a lot of people have thought that there would have, and it is very common for cultures to mix and mingle as we see today in a very diverse population we have, even just in Aotearoa.
Indeed.
And so the fact that these people in the Bismarck archipelago that were forming this culture that became Pacific cultures, that they were keeping themselves separate from the other Papuan culture that had been there for since they first got there about 50,000 years ago, and these new people came in about 3,300 years ago, and they decided that they were okay living next to each other, but one of them decided, okay, there's a lot of people here already, so let's try and see what we can find further out in the Pacific, and out they went.
Yeah, that's right. And I suppose, I mean, what does the evidence, and more specifically now, what does the evidence of separate interaction spheres tell us, I suppose, about ancient Pacific trade, if we can go there, and social networks?
So it's quite interesting because so ancient DNA can tell us a lot about how complex genetic diversity is of the people themselves. So normally we're just looking at archaeological data in this area, and so we can't understand more of it's kind of more of the whakapapa of the people of the area and how they've related in the past. And it's really notable because you can see having this data to support the archaeological data. So, for example, there's some of the burials that are in the southern part of Papua New Guinea. One population, they had evidence of skull modification, so they were binding their skulls, which would have been a very distinct look, a very strong cultural identity that they had,
Yeah.
compared to a group that was pretty much just next door to them, had a completely different burial practice where they were interring in a cave and things like that. So seeing that reflected in the genetics is very interesting and unique.
Very, very interesting. Okay, and I suppose, I mean, a question as well that I'll be keen to dive into is what role did New Guinea play in the broader Pacific migration story, do you think?
So, Papua New Guinea and the Bismarck archipelago, more significantly, was where we first see people coming from East Asia before they go out into the Pacific. So, this Lapita people or Lapita cultural complex was really formed in that area. You don't really see much of the kind of pottery and other things that they were bringing through until you get to that area. And so they kind of hung out there for a while before they then spread out further past Vanuatu and into Samoa and Tonga, and then a few thousand years later into the rest of the Pacific.
Indeed. And I suppose as well, what does this study or how does it perhaps reshape the story or the narrative of the Lapita people, who are often seen as, obviously the ancestors of Māori and other Pacific groups?
Hmm. So I guess it supports what we already know that Lapita people were moving from the Bismarck Archipelago into remote Oceania,
Mm-hmm.
but it really shows that these people were not mixed with local Papuans, so they were keeping themselves very separate from Papuans, even though they almost certainly were interacting. And but then later in time, so a few thousand years later, Papuans with or people with Papuan ancestry came in and completely genetically replaced the population in Vanuatu, but they kept the Austronesian languages. So the languages that Lapita people had stayed there, but all of a sudden their genetics completely changed to be Papuan. So there's still stuff that we don't really know about
Yeah.
the details of yet, but we're getting closer and closer to finding out more.
Fascinating. Okay, and I suppose as well, I mean, not to try and get into some controversy here, I mean, but could the discovery of distinct genetic groups impact cultural identity or heritage claims across the Pacific, do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for because this is such a long time ago, we don't report on or feel comfortable trying to link these ancient populations to people today
Mm-hmm.
because they are likely related to everybody in the Pacific. So trying to actually pin down different specific groups that they might belong to, I don't think is very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I see the point you're making. Okay, I mean, and also, how do these findings, I suppose, challenge or maybe it's complements the word oral histories or traditional knowledge held by Pacific communities?
I don't think that it contradicts them. It, if anything, confirms a lot of them.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
certainly.
it's and because of how the languages are spoken, and still today, Austronesian languages, Maori, Te Reo, and other Pacific languages are all part of the Austronesian language family. So, um, yeah, obviously the language continues through time.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the big question. I mean, there'll be some listening this morning kind of asking, I mean, what ethical considerations are involved when working, in this space?
Mhm. So we try to work very closely, or we don't try to, we do work very closely with the communities that these archaeological sites and Urupara burial grounds are. They are involved in the study. They Our data is reported to these communities before it's published. And we have so we're this study is mainly led by the Max Planck Institute, which is in Germany,
Right.
um, and some people in New Zealand as well that aren't at the university, like Dr. Rebecca Kinniston. She's one of the main authors, and so are the German colleagues. But our massive team has people that are in the Pacific as well as the people in Europe working together, and they come here and they report their results back to communities here, so they're not completely separate like has been in the past. So there's a
Yeah.
lot more discussion between communities and researchers these days.
I see. I see. Okay. With that in mind, give us just maybe the nerdy person in me wants to know the intricacies of actually pulling together a study like this. Give us a sense of how long you guys have been working on this, and just what the scale in terms of what's involved in actually bringing research like this together.
Oh, it's huge. So just all of the different archaeological sites involved have been excavated over decades at this point.
Mm.
And so that was the first step getting, and that communities will work with excavators to also uncover all of these things, and then they have to be taken to labs and analyzed. So there's teams that look at the diet, which is looking at the chemistry of the bones and the teeth of
Mm.
people and animals.
Mm-hmm.
There's people looking at the diet. So that's my main specialty, is looking at tiny little micro particles that are found in people's teeth.
Yeah.
And so I was able to see that people were eating a lot of tree crops and probably using them as medicine as well. So I see evidence of bark remains and stuff in their teeth, which is usually an indication of medicinal use. There's people that do the dating at other places, and everybody's got their different specialties and working together. But this particular study has probably taken well over a decade to get all of the data together and all of the right people in the right place.
That's extraordinary. Is there a bit of a sigh of relief now that it's out there, or is it really there's
Oh
still work
yeah.
to be done?
Yeah, even just the publication part has been through quite a rigorous process. So we've had a lot of feedback from other researchers that we've taken on board and incorporated into the project. Um, yeah, so and it's going to be ongoing after this. So it's exciting to be able to talk about it and share it with people now, and see where we go from here.
Indeed. And look, how can Pacific people be more involved in this research? And I mean, what's the benefit of involving, our community more intimately in, research like this?
I think it's huge. Down at Otago, where I work, the Otago University, we have a really strong Pacific student cohort here, and in archaeology, we have several students from throughout the Pacific that are working on projects in their own communities, and that's becoming more and more common. And we hope that it will become more and more common. We like to try and get as many Pacific and uh, archaeologists trained up so that they can go back and work in their communities. So, yeah,
No, it's
more people need to be encouraged to do the things that they're really interested in and passionate about, I guess.
yeah, no, that's a good message there. Hey, look, thank you very much for your time. This is fascinating stuff, and just a heads up as well, if you want to check out the full details of this, we'll have it up on our website a wee bit later on this morning, www.pmn.co.nz, as well as this full interview up for you to view on our Facebook page and on YouTube too. Thank you very much, Dr. Monica Tromp.
Thank you.
You're listening to Pacific Morning.